Welcome to the Fatherhood Challenge, a movement to awaken and inspire fathers everywhere to take great pride in their role and to challenge society to understand how important fathers are to the stability and culture of their family's environment. Now, here's your host, Jonathan Guerrero.
Greetings, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. I have a very special guest with me. He is the author of a book called Now I Am Known, and his name is Peter Mutabazi. I am so glad to have Peter on this program. He has a very powerful story to share. If you have not read his book, I would highly suggest that you pick up the book and that you read it. I read it cover to cover. I have to say that if it doesn't change your life, you're probably dead. It's on that level. You just have to try it. So I am very grateful to have him with me to have a wonderful conversation and a very deep conversation about his life and his story. Peter, thank you so much for being on the program with us.
Absolutely. I'm truly a blessing and to be with you, especially. Thank you, Jonathan, for having me here. A joy, truly a joy.
Would you start by sharing your background and why you wrote this book?
Well, the reason why I wrote this book was, I think, I'm a foster dad and I have kids that love me so much, but I wanted them to know who their dad was. I wanted them to know that, you know, uh, I'm a, I'm a dad that loves them. That sometimes I think they see the best in me, but they sometimes I think they question, do you really understand where we come from? Do you understand what we went through? And I think for me, wanting to really get to know the details of my life was the best way that I can really lead them into my own journey and be able to see if dad can go through this, I think he can help me overcome what I'm going through. And for the readers too, I really wanted to encourage the readers that our past should not define our future, or we should not hold on the past so much that somehow it ruins what we're capable of doing. That I wanted the readers to truly see, how I managed to beat the odds and how God in some way carried me through each moment and how I got here. And that was the reason why I wrote the book, to really give an insight of what it takes or what it means and the struggles I had to go through, but somehow how a stranger changed my life. That maybe they can be that stranger, they can be that person that changed my life to someone else around them.
In the book, you talk about taking the first step to fulfilling your potential after trauma and abuse. Can you share how you were prompted to take that first step?
Well, first step, well, so I didn't really know what hope was. Like I didn't like, when you grow up and there's no hope in your life, you somehow don't know what the future was. I grew up not wishing if I could have an extra day. That's all I could think about. So once this man began feeding me, and then once he suggested that, hey, if you have an opportunity to go to school, would I go to school? So in my head, that's how I wrestled, saying, wait a minute, if this stranger is really want to do something for me, should I take it or should I not? But also, it was a scary moment because I felt like because most people were kind to us were also abusive at the same time. So him being kind to me also raised the flags like, oh, he might hurt you. So for him to say go to school, it took me a little while to warm up to that. But after a while, I was like, you know what? He's been faithful for a year and a half. Let me just give him one day. So that's all it took. Just let me give him one day. And sure enough, one day turned out to a lifetime. And that's really how it started for me, just saying, what if? And if what if, can I give it a try? I didn't know what the future was, but I was like, it doesn't hurt to try. I'll give it a shot.
When I read the book, there were some moments I had to stop and just pause for a moment. The abuse that you went through is unimaginable to most of us who are listening right now. Some of it can make your stomach turn. And the one question I know is going to be in many minds of some readers is, where was God through the abuse? Where was God through the beatings? Where was God through all of the suffering? Through the times when you were literally a kid and homeless? Where was he?
I knew God was there. I knew, and I grew up in a very staunch Roman Catholic family. That our grandparents, we would pray. I got the beatings because I didn't finish the rosary, when I was required to. So there was a sense that I knew who God was. but I think I wanted him to take my life sooner. I think that's where I felt like, God, if you are there, just please take my life sooner so I don't have to see the misery towards me and towards my mom and my siblings. That I can somehow, in the midst of that, I still really, in some way, believe that, God is there. And if He's there, can He make this end sooner? But never was I at a point to say, God, where are you? How dare you? But rather, if you are, please take this quickly, please. And that was my prayer every day. Or, some nights we would go to bed with no food, and my mom or my grandma would say, hey, let's pray for the food, because that was a tradition that we did. But we always say, how do we pray for the food that we're not going to eat? There's no food. What's the reason to pray for?
Hmm.
And my grandma would say, well, even the air we eat is food from God, that we ought to be grateful for that. So, in some way, I think I still had the sense of He's there in some way, though I wasn't seeing maybe the best of all. But also too, remember, I come from a world where poverty and hopelessness was everywhere. It wasn't just my family that was struggling with food. It wasn't just me that was struggling with clean water that I had to walk miles and miles away. It was everyone. So there's a sense it was all of us are in it in some way. That God, if He's there, He is seeing all of us. Like, it wasn't just me, it was everyone. And I think that really helped me in some way. I mean, not through a fist towards him, but in some way to say, when can you finish this? And I think for me, I wasn't dreaming or wanting him, hey, could he make my life better? But rather, could he take my life sooner than wait for all that I had to go through? That was my sense of God. uh, or even just a little glimpse of hope, when my dad didn't have to beat someone that night we all slept well, to know that God, that's good that we didn't have to cry all night, or my mother. So in the midst of that, I think I still had a sense of, He's there, and somehow He will show.
For those living in survival mode, what is your advice to them?
Wow, survival mode. I mean, and we've trained our brains to think that way, to do things that way. Like it took me years to practice not to be in a fearful, flight mode. That I had to learn how to practice things, how to believe in things, how to have faith in people. That gently, slowly, I really learned ways on how to not live in that mode in some way. So I would say, yes, it's not a switch. It's not you can do one thing and that goes away. But I think in our day-to-day life, we can learn ways that can really help us, um, move away from living in that mode of flight mode. That I began to believe in people, because 90% of the people I grew up with hurt me in some way. That including my mom. As a street boy, everyone was mean. You're cold. You never amount to anything. You garbage. I had every day in my entire life from my dad saying, "I wish you were never born, so I did not have to feed you." And so to hear those and to live in that, yes, it takes years of pain, but also it takes years of learning slowly by slowly on how to truly not live in a world of fear. So I would say, don't give up on yourself. Look forward to what you can do. I learned how to do small things that really helped me to really overcome some of those fears or reaction that to me, if someone stood and looked at me, the next thing was, I'm going to punch him because he's about to punch me. But then I realized that, no, that's not true, that they are not there to hurt me in some way, that I began to see people
Hmm.
in a different way. But I had to practice that every day. And along the way, it became a little bit normal for me to live that way.
When you were in Rwanda, you saw terrible devastation and incredible examples of hate. How did this affect you? Did you see God any point through that experience?
Absolutely. You'd be surprised. That's the day or the time that I came to know the Lord as my savior,
Oh,
during the Rwanda.
wow.
But here's how. So I had harbored anger towards my dad so bad that I wanted to go home one day and hurt him, because I thought the best way I can pay him back is breaking his leg or breaking his arm, like doing some physical harm. That was my whole goal. I'm 19 now. I'm going to go really show him what a man looks like. But also, I struggled understanding God in a sense of, the Bible says, forgive even those who wrong against you. For me, I was like, man, we can forgive people, but there's some that we should not forgive. And that includes my dad. So I did not become a believer because I felt like it was unfair to forgive my dad without having him to pay or me going back home and do something. So when I went to Rwanda for the first time during the genocide, I wasn't prepared what I was about to see. And there and then, and as a 19, 20-year old, you seeing thousands of dead bodies and to see the atrocities. And I think I stood there thinking, how could people do this to others? How could they kill their fellow neighbors, their fellow brothers, their fellow church member, their fellow classmate? Like how could they do that? But in the midst of that, I also realized that, man, with my anger, with what I wanted to do to my dad, that I was capable of doing the same, that I was no different than these people who had killed people in Rwanda, that I knew, looking in my own heart, that I was capable of doing the same. And that's when I turned to the driver and I said, I know we might be killed while we're here, and I really want to go to heaven. And he said, come on, you work for compassion. You go to church. You, I believe. I said, no, I look like one. I act like one, but I don't know him as my Lord and Savior because I've harbored anger so much towards my dad for everything I wanted to do towards my dad that God had already done for me, that I did not have to carry the weight. I mean, literally, as soon as he finished praying, I felt like I had lost 100 pounds because the weight of that was gone in an instant, that I knew that he will forgive me, that I knew that I didn't know him because I had harbored that anger. And witnessing what had happened in Rwanda, I knew I was no different than those killers. I was no different than people who had done all that to their neighbors. And I wanted to know him clearly by letting go of the anger towards my dad.
For people that go through trauma or through some sort of or horrific abuse in their life, they struggle with trying to let go of that, to free themselves from that, to become something more, to even think of themselves as something more than that. What was the first step that you took in not letting your past define you?
Well, so first step. So here's what happened one day. So when I was 8 years old, my dad had beat me, and I was in pain and mad for hours. I was just so mad, you know. But then I had to go fetch water about 3 miles away. So on my way, I got to fetch water. On my way back, I passed by the bar where he was. And I saw him playing. He was playing cards with his friends and he was laughing so hard and happy. And then I looked and I said, look, I've been sulking for 4 hours. But this man forgot the minute he left. Like, I didn't exist. It's like nothing happened. And in that moment, I thought, wait a minute, I can let him beat me physically, but I have control to control my mind that he can't get to it. Like, you can do whatever you want to do physically, but mentally, I'm not gonna let you get to my mind. At
Mm.
8, I figured that out. Like, wait, there are two different things. I got a body and I got a soul. And if I can keep my soul away from him, then I'm okay. And I think that really helped me in some way to survive. And I can remember going back home and telling my siblings, like, you know what? Let's make a game. If dad is gonna beat someone, let's figure out how we can, let's say, count who's gonna, how long it's gonna take before you cry, or we're gonna give you a cloth so you have a better padding on yourself, so you didn't have to hear. So we made it more of a, not a fun, but more of a game. Like, look, I know how I can protect myself. I'm not really letting this person get to my mental capacity. And that was maybe my first incline of saying, wait a minute, I have control in what I take and what I hear and how I let someone in my own mind.
That's
And I think
powerful.
exactly. And that really helped me. And as a street kid too, people would call me names, they would throw things at me. But I tried to say, hey, that's what you think, but I'm not going to let you really affect me mentally in a way you want to. But I have control for that. And that's really what helped me. Yeah, I don't know how I figured that as an 8-year old, but somehow it's really helped me survive to this day.
Hmm. You did not start out wanting to change the world, but you have discovered that you are changing the world. How are you doing this, and how can others make a difference just like you?
Oh, Jonathan, I don't know. I might be crying in a minute soon. I think when he took me in, I wasn't just, hey, this is a kid we just brought in. He took me in. I stayed, once he let me stay with his family, I would sleep in the same bedroom as his kids. I would sit on the same table as their family. That they included a chair for me to sit on the table. And for me, I think that really made me um, like begin to really see what life is. I saw what a dad ought to be. I saw what family structure looks like. I saw what love meant. I saw what to love unconditionally meant because they did that towards me. And I think I yearn to be like them, like him. Like if there's any human being I want to be like, this is the man I want to be like. If I ever want to have a family, I want to have this family. So he gave me the best example to aspire for. But then in the midst of that, I realized that he cared for people, that his number one goal was to rescue the most vulnerable children. And I think for me, that's what affected me because I wanted to be like him. That was a little bit easier for me to follow in his footsteps. But also, honestly, I felt like I'd been given so much that I wanted to do something for them. Luke 12:48 says, to whom much is given, much is required. Like I knew I'd been given so much as a kid who had absolutely nothing. That for me not to use it to save and bless others, that would be really in some way a slap in God's kindness towards me, that I knew I have a call to really help and do the best I can. But also, he taught me the life of Joseph. It was really funny. Like every time I wanted to give up, he would say, Peter, do you remember the life of Joseph? I'll say,
Yes.
yes. And he would say, what did he say when his brothers found him and they were afraid
Hmm.
that he's gonna kill them? What did he say? He said, for what you meant for evil, God used it to save lives. So in some way, I looked at myself like, yes, I was abused, but somehow I can use it as a foundation to help others. And really, he instilled those in me that I really wanted to use my own story, my own background, rather than shame or use it to do the worst of it. Be my own father. He really taught me how can you renew what happened to you for someone else to live a better life. And that became my mission to truly be a voice for kids, but also do what I can do to truly impact the life of the most vulnerable.
So, Peter, if we look at any of the images of you that are out there, we can't help but notice that there is somebody with you, and I think it's your son. But here's the other thing, and I'm just going to state the obvious that everybody else will see. And Peter, you are African, you're from Uganda, you are black, and you are a foster dad, and your kids, your children are white.
Yes.
What is your experience? What has it been? What has your experience been having an interracial family? And what are the lessons we all can learn from that?
Oh boy, yes. I need a day to just talk about that with you. Well, I think for me, so here's where it all began. I've traveled to more than 100 countries, and most of the time I traveled with people who are thinking of adoption, or they're in the process of adoption, or they're picking up their kids. But of all I traveled with, they were always white, married couples. So as an African black man, I knew I did not qualify. I thought you have to be white, you have to be married. I wasn't married and I was black, so I thought, well, maybe that's a place I don't qualify. So I believed the lie. So when I came to United States, when I really understood the needs for foster care, I really felt like these kids, I understand them. I can truly, in some way share a little bit of my journey to help them. So I went in the foster care thinking, well, I'm going to be a mentor, just a mentor 1 day a week that I can do, until the social work said, hey, have you ever thought of being a foster dad? To which I replied, I do not qualify. And she said, why? I said, I'm single. She's like, no, that's a lie. So I said, where do I sign up? And I signed up. And then, I realized, like, well, I think in my mind, I thought the most marginalized are Hispanic, African American, Native American. So my kids would automatically be, coming from those areas.
Hmm.
But little did I know that when it comes to abuse and neglect and and sexual abuse and verbal and physical. Like it ranges from every family, rich or poor, that our kids get to experience all that. And my second child was that as blonde as you could go, and I was like, wait, is this kid coming to me? At first, I thought, I think you're at the wrong house. They're like, nope, it is your house. I was like, oh, okay. And once I received that kid, I think I saw, he came in, and the next day he just said, Dad, can I have something to eat? I was like, wait a minute, what? Did you just call me Dad? It's 4 year old. And I was like, wait,
Mm.
what? And then I saw, just, I think for me, that the the need, and how this kid wasn't looking for a black dad. This kid wasn't looking for a mom. He was just looking for someone who makes sure that he's safe and loved, and he had everything he needed, including food. That's all he wanted.
He was just
And
looking for a real dad.
absolutely. And then I realized that, I can be a real dad to every child. And but also I realized that, yes, there are less people who look like me that are foster parents, that have white kids, that I realized everywhere we went, people would be like, are these your kids? Yes. Or every time I went to pick them up from daycare or school, they're like, who are your kids? And I said, those. They're like, can you show us the proof? Or sometimes they will, someone will call the police if we went to the grocery store. Like, hey, there's a black man. He has two kids. I don't think it just doesn't seem right. He has a different accent. The kids don't look like him. And of course, then from there, I understood that yes, it wasn't something people had seen every day or they were seeing every day. And I knew it was my time to change the narrative in some way, to really be brave about it and say, this is what my journey is going to be. This is what my family is going to look like. This is what my family is. And there's nothing I'm going to change because of your attitude. But rather, I'm going to truly be a voice to make sure
Mm.
that every child is seen, heard, and known, no matter where they come from. I signed up to help every child that needs help. I usually take kids, from emergency hospitals, from the police, or they are DSS and they have nowhere to go. I always say, I'll take them as you figure out where they're going to go, because that's who needs us. And people, yes, will question me. And I think at first I thought, man, this is hard. But then I realized that, hey, it's my joy to truly change the narrative that we can all do good, but also families don't have too much, But also, I think I had the best example. The man who took me in, we didn't speak the same language. We didn't come from the same place. We went people who looked like each other, but somehow he loved me as who he was. That really helped me to love kids as who they were, despite of where they're coming from, and despite of what they had gone through, that I knew I was there for every child. And the rest is history. But also, I think it's my job to educate those who don't know, who question. The other day, I'll give you an example. We're at Casco, which happens often in Costco. Before the kids get to test food, there has to be a parent. So my kids said, Dad, can we go try a food? I said, sure. And the lady looked at them and said, hey, I'm not giving you food until you go get your parents. And my kids, all in unison, they said, but he's right here. What do you tell me I go get another parent?
Wow.
And this lady just, I mean, you should have seen her. She turned blue, and I was like, "It's okay." I said, "It's okay, madam. Next time, just ask." And I say, "I'll feel honored if you ask me, are you their father?" And I'll say yes or no. But for you to assume I'm not their dad is wrong. And then I also asked her, I say, "I'm not making a big deal, but if I was white and my kids were black, would you have asked?" And she said, "No." Which was
Mm.
honest. She said, because I see them often. I have never seen, a black man who's a dad to four white kids, and in some way I assumed that they had a different parents. But little did I know that you're the dad, and I'm sorry. And I walked away, but I knew I didn't have to be mad, but I left, with that I feel like I educated someone.
You handled it
Uh,
well. You turned, and that's just it. You handled it well. You turned it into an opportunity to educate.
Absolutely.
And it sounds like that's the way she took it too.
Yes, and now every time we see her, she's walking, we go and say, hello, hello. We call her by name, but I didn't want to make a beat, but I wanted to teach her. And I know she's going to reach to other 10, 20 people where she can,
Hmm.
kind of really share with them what happened as well.
Well, we have had an amazing conversation, and we have only scratched the surface of what's in the book. Everything we've talked about in this episode is in the book, but it's just a little bit of what's there. And having read it cover to cover, do yourself a favor and go pick up the book. I will make it very, very easy. If you go to this episode, so first go to thefatherhoodchallenge.com. That's thefatherhoodchallenge.com. If you go to this episode and go to the description, I will post the links of where you can get this book. So do yourself a favor, get it for yourself, get it for someone else. I can promise you 110% you will not regret it. It is a very inspiring, it is a very motivational, and I'll go as far as to say it is a life-changing story. It will change your life. As we close, would you tell us a little bit more about your organization?
Yeah, so my job, or my my job for the rest of my life is to advocate. I want to foster more, I want to adopt more, and I truly want to be an advocate for more kids. And that's my goal. We have plushies I get to share in schools and churches and hospitals as well. That is what exists. So now I'm known. For me and my kids, we really want to inspire others, but also share the journey that we've taken in life. And I want my kids to really be a voice for others as well. Yes, they've found a forever family, but how they can inspire others to have hope, but also how we can recruit, encourage those who are already foster friends, but also those who are thinking about it. What resource can we give you, or a knowledge of us who've walked it, to help you truly step in and change the life of one child or one family at a time. And that's what we're all about.
Thank you so much for your time being here, for sharing your story and your book, Now I Am Known. Again, do yourself a favor and get this book. Get it for anyone that you know that needs a little bit of an inspiration, and it will change your life. Now I Am Known, that's the title of the book, and it will be in the description below the description of this episode. Peter, thank you so much for the time you've spent with us. It has truly been an honor to spend this time with you.
Thank you, Jonathan, for giving us the voice. We love what you do and what you stand for, and we appreciate for making our voice seen, heard, and known.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Fatherhood Challenge. If you would like to contact us, listen to other episodes, find any resource mentioned in this program, or find out more information about the Fatherhood Challenge, please visit thefatherhoodchallenge.com. That's thefatherhoodchallenge.com.